everybody just don't understand what's going on. And I need to share this because this will help people understand exactly what I did for them.
Okay.
When I say what I did, what I gave you ain't no bond. I gave you cash. And when I say the word gave, it's because I gave it to you.
Yeah. Thank you.
You know, you did not pay for it with the bond because the bond is not redeemable yet.
Yes.
And I'm getting ready to show you that now. Thank you so far, everyone that is attending, because this is going to be very important and everybody needs to understand this. And then once they understand this, then they'll know where's the money coming from. That's important. Where do I get the money? When do I get the money? How do I get the money? What is hypothecation? Well, we're going to go over bonds, what the difference is between an international bill of exchange, what is a bond, you know, what is a collateral. All of them fall under the category of collateral guarantees, but all of them are not collateral. And for you, Queen of Bitcoin, even Bitcoin itself can be a collateral guarantee, but it's not collateral.
Okay. Yeah, I know that there's some private placement programs that have started to use Bitcoin.
Yeah, but they'll use it, but they're not collateral because it's a floating point on the pricing. That means the valuation is never, in other words, it doesn't have a store of value because there's no real asset beneath it. That's why last week it went from 40,000 down to 20,000, then back up to 37. Trust me, when I say a bond is backed by a stable medium of exchange. Okay, well, we're going to go through this topic because we're going to talk about the different types of bonds and the different valuation methods of bonds. Did you know that even an appraisal can be a bond?
Are you going to talk about historical bonds?
We're going to talk about historical bonds. We're going to talk about the current bonds and the risk that you take by purchasing bonds.
Okay.
Let's see, I'm just adding a few more people so that we can go into detail.
Your haircut is loving.
Well, thank you. I'm sitting in the office right now. It's spiked. Let me just put the camera for 1 second so you can see. But I'm see. Aha. Oh, did it work? I don't see.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
we can see you.
They spiked.
Yeah, we can see you.
Looks great.
Because even part of looking young is having a young looking haircut.
You know, I'm planning to go to Dubai in a few days.
Oh, well, when you get here, it'll be great. Right now, we're going to escape reality. Or we're going to enter into reality and escape the fictional world. Because a lot of people got all these ideas, and it's really because of the miseducation of the brokers that's bringing everybody else in this business. Because they don't know nothing, so it's the blind leading the blind. You know, and the problem is that they're wondering why it takes them so long to hypothecate something that has no value. Now, it doesn't mean that it won't have a future value, but the only thing that you can collateralize and at whatever value it is something that has a current value. Crypto, the only reason why me as a trader, I'm licensed too, I wouldn't use it, is because it fluctuates up and down. If it was stable, like our gold-backed crypto that we're about to release, I could do that because it will never reduce below kits, which is the actual price of gold.
David, have you heard about I think more and more people are talking about Basel III now.
It doesn't apply to us. See, one of the things that maybe the class that you missed was that there's two different sides to society. There's the statutory side, which is admiralty jurisdiction, which is laws and statutes. You know, they're acts and statutes, not laws. Acts and statutes applies to corporate fictions. We're not a corporate fiction. That's why you don't see the Rothschilds or the Federal Reserve in a Banker's Almanac, because they're on the private side with us. That's why you don't see HSBC private banking in the same place as HSBC. The private banking that holds 99.9% of the money ain't on none of these lists. JP Morgan has a private banking side too. So what the first thing you got to do is step back a little bit so you can see both sides. The richest person in the world on the public side is broker than the poorest person on the private side. So what I'm trying to tell you is just like the United States itself, they have something called the Suster KV Trust. That's the private side. And that private side is not bankrupt. The public side is bankrupt, the one that we see on US debt clock. Divine law is a totally different level above all of that. You know, nothing's going to change because you don't understand it the first time. It is what it is. And the only way for you to understand all of this is you got to study. And when I'm finished explaining it to you, you're going to know everything about it, because I don't just browse the surface of any subject. I drill down. And I learned that when I was an internet security CISSP specialist. You drill down on everything. Even some of the CEOs of some of the 17 banks that we owe don't have a clue what's going on. All they want to do is get a check, buy a Ferrari, a new house, and then just go somewhere with the family on vacation. Education is nowhere near what it was when I came up. I love education before computer, because education wasn't free. Right now, it's free for all you guys, because all you got to do is Google it. But when you got to get up off your butt and go to the library every day to go and research stuff to try to find something out, it makes you hungry. People ain't hungry today. They just want to be sit back like a baby bird and be fed the worms. So now we're going to talk about exactly what's going on in this economy and why some of us, and you notice I'm saying us, some of us have a whole lot of money, and some of the other people have no money at all. And some people have a little bit of money. It doesn't matter if you have any money or no money. Money is easily accessible to anybody who really wants it. When I say really wants it, that means they're going to go and get it. They're going to do whatever it takes legally. We don't do anything illegal because the system is set up where there ain't there's no money in the system. The only money still to this day for the past 5,000 plus years is gold and silver, precious stones, and minerals. That's it. And the energy of the people.
Say it again.
There is no money in fiat. The crypto is not money either. All of that is just supply and demand, smoke and mirrors. And I'm getting ready to tell you why you don't have money when your whole body is the money. Because it's the energy. Where did money come from? Money comes from the energy that it takes to produce something and trade it with somebody else. The something that you produced took the res or the energy of that human being. It took that energy to make it valuable to the person that you're giving it to. And the thing that you're giving is considered the money. Now, there's different types of money. Some money is a medium of exchange. It could be apples, it could be oranges, it could be a stick with little slits in it. And every time somebody owe you money, you put a slit in it. So they have to pay you something, some energy, some labor, anything, according to the records that you keep. Because a fool and his money is very soon parted. And you know what the money is? Your energy, because you're wasting your energy running around, listening to all these broker jokers, and you don't even understand that you are the money.
I have one question, King David. Can you please explain the quantum system?
Quantum mechanics is based on divine law. Divine law talks about quantum. Let me show you. Royal House of David. And the reason why I put all of this up there, because I'm getting older, guys. And guess what? You know, people are getting more and more ignorant by the day. And if I don't leave all of this knowledge behind for people to get, ain't nobody going to sit there and really go study. They're just going to keep listening. From most of the information that's out here is somebody saying something and somebody else taking that information and spreading it, and they don't even understand what they spread. Even quantum mechanics, physics, all of that came from divine law, which comes from God. Whether you want to believe in them or not, I'm going to show you right here. Okay? And this quantum financial system doesn't exist. That's just them naming something, whatever they want to name it. This right here is divine law. And when you look at quantum mechanics and physics and subatomic particles, it was here long before Adam. You see? Units, elements, properties, subatomic elements, properties, gravity, all of that stuff was here long before Adam. The Vatican hid it from you guys. But you would never know that because you don't care enough to go and study it. And then you know what's true and the rest of it is bullcrap. What is a proton? What is a neutron? What is a photon? You know, those are carrier waves that light itself travels on. From now on, go and study. Anything somebody tells you, you drill down on it. If the origin didn't come from the origin of all law, which is here, I'm getting ready to show you, this is the origin of law. All of these are the laws that have been in existence since long before man. They come from these sacred texts. There's a lot of other sacred texts here. Our whole legal system, or the common law system, comes from ecclesiastical law, and the statutory law comes from the admiralty, which is international law. Let's go back to money. What is money? Money is a medium of exchange. We just talked about it. So the energy that it takes for me to grow my peppermints, me tilling the land and doing all that, and the same energy you planting the apple trees and you picking them and putting them in a basket, that's the money. Money and currency is not the same thing. The money is the res, or the energy that is indicated on the UCC1 financing statement that they use when they monetized your certificate of live birth and gave you a birth certificate. Birth certificate is the money. In 1929, Woodrow Wilson said, we need to monetize our biological property because we have no more gold. In 1925, they seized all the gold and they had to give the gold away because of the debt from World War I. So when there was no gold left, they had to find another way to finance their operations. So they started monetizing the people. So in 1863, when they signed the Emancipation Proclamation and freed the slaves for the Black people, they decided we'll make a whole lot more happen if we enslave everybody now. So now white people, Black people, purple people, everybody's in slavery. And they don't even know it. That's what makes it worse. Because they're giving you this worthless paper called currency in exchange for your real money, which is your energy. Let's go to money versus currency real quick. When you finish watching this video, you're going to realize that you are the money, first of all. Second thing you're going to realize is that the whole economy is broke. And the only money that's left is in a few hands of a few people, and I'm one of them. Your true wealth is your time and your freedom. And when you spend your time to go and dig up some dirt so you can plant some seeds, to grow some bananas so you can sell the bananas, and if there's no medium of exchange, you trade the bananas for a flag that you want. So technically, the real money is the time and the energy. But let's go through it.
Your true wealth is your time and freedom. Money is just a tool for trading your time. It's a container to store your economic energy until you're ready to deploy it. But the whole world...
Your economic energy. What is another word for economic energy? It's called a res. And I'm gonna show you how they have you listed on the UCC as res, or a transmitting utility. Okay? We're gonna go into that. But the first thing we're gonna do is, let me show you that so you can really understand that. Let's go to I'm gonna view this online, and I hope you guys don't mind that if I stop, because I'm tired of people telling me they got something and then next week they ask me the same question over and over, like the answer gonna change. The answer doesn't change. That's who we are, okay? This is who we are. They take your certificate of live birth. Once again, this is not a birth certificate. When I say certificate of live birth, it is not to be confused with a birth certificate. A certificate of live birth is the one that the doctors, they sign this with the mom and the dad, creating a trust. And then they assign the trusteeship over to the Department of the Treasury. And all the birth certificates prior to 2010, they were all held at 55 Water Street, called the Tower of Power on Wall Street. So this is what a certificate of live birth is. And this has the doctor's signature, your mom and your dad, and this is the property that's being transferred over to the government, which is you. And you'll know that this is the original because it has upper and lowercase letters. The birth certificate you have that is not a certificate of live birth has all capital letters. Why? Because there's a law called Capitis Diminutio Maxima. It's under Black's law, is where they created you using your all capital letters. They took the shackles from the black people's legs and those nooses that they had around their necks, and they gave it to everybody now, and you become a slave. They use Capitis Diminutio Maxima, which means all capital letters, the highest and most comprehensive loss of status. What do you mean loss of status? Well, your status originally was the sons of Adam, who owned everything. That was your original status. You understand? So now your parents volunteered you in this agreement with that birth certificate. When you see the Declaration of Independence, it's actually interdependence. It ain't independence for you. For people, DECLARATION of INDEP, dependence. This is what it looks like. That's the Declaration of Independence. And the preamble says here, we the people. Now, if this just meant all people, it wouldn't have a capital P if you understand grammatical English. Anything with a capital letter beginning with it or preceding whatever it is written after it is a specific person, place, or thing. That is what is called a noun. Okay? You know what nouns are, right? I know I spelled it wrong, but let me see. Let's see. A noun is a specific person, place, or thing. And it's indicated by a capital letter in the beginning. Yeah, they broke this down all the way through to the thesaurus. We ain't gonna go through with that because everybody already know that a noun starts with a capital letter. Okay? So when they said we the people, they were talking about Adam's children, those people. Because everything was based on the scripture, and that is still the basis of all law globally because you are still swearing on the religious books. When you go to any courtroom, which technically is a bank, especially in the US, because the US lost their courts in 1989 in a bankruptcy. So there is no US courtrooms anymore. They might call it a court, but it's a bank. And the reason why your paperwork and your cases are brought into a bank is because the bank is handling the bonds, which are these birth certificates, which is backing the money. That's why these codes are on the birth certificates, and they look so similar to the codes on the US dollars. That's why these codes are on the birth certificates, and they look so similar to the codes on the US dollars. This is a financial instrument. Woodrow Wilson said, monetize your biological property. Now you understand where the money is coming from that's backing the bonds, that is going to the Federal Reserve, that is using these numbers to print on the currency that they're giving you, okay? So now let's go back. Now, I wanted to show you one more thing, and then we're gonna go back to this video. I wanted to show you that the energy of the human being, because I took this birth certificate, I found my UCC online, and where it says secured party here, it used to be US Department of the Treasury, but I refilled all mine out and I took it back from the Secretary of State. And here, the debtor, who's the debtor? That's your birth certificate. It's actually an organization, trade name, or trademark. The debtor is a transmitting utility. So the debtor is the energy that he's talking about in this video.
Your true wealth is your time and freedom. Money is just a tool for trading your time. It's a container to store your economic energy until you're ready to deploy it. But the whole world has been turned away from real money and has been fooled into using currency. A deceitful imposter that is silently stealing your two most valuable assets, your time and your freedom. Welcome to the rabbit hole.
We are entering a period of financial crisis that is the greatest the world has ever known. The wealth transfer that will take place during this decade is the greatest wealth transfer in history. Wealth is never destroyed.
And it's already happened. So some of you are too late. We did that in 2015, and we took all the wealth when we took all the gold. But let's go a little further. But the difference is that we're sharing it.
It is merely transferred, and that means that on the opposite side of every crisis, there is an opportunity. The great news is that all you have to do to turn this crisis into your great opportunity is to educate yourself. I believe that the best investment that you can make in your lifetime is your own education. Education on the history of money, education on finance, education on how the global economy works, education on how all of these guys, the central bankers, the stock market, how they can cheat you, how they can scam you. If you learn what is going on and how the financial world works, you can put yourself on the correct side of this wealth transfer. Winston Churchill once said that the further you look into the past, the further that you can see into the future. This program is all about creating your own crystal ball, being able to gaze into the future, being able to change this crisis, the greatest crisis in the history of mankind, into your great opportunity.
Part of what he's saying, he said, educate yourself. He doesn't mean just listen to what people are telling you and to repeat it. What he's saying is educate yourself, and you go all the way back to the history so you'll understand what's going on today. Basel III, Basel II, all of that's nonsense. It depends on what jurisdiction you're in, whether any of it even applies to you.
The hidden secrets of money, some of them are hidden in plain sight. They're like right in front of you. The way the monetary system works is something that isn't actually hidden away from all of us. It's out in the open, but it's complex and people just they can't see how it works. It's hard for them to imagine that we're living in such a hoax.
And that's when you was talking to me, Shelley, earlier about the valuation of bonds. We're going to go over this. But this right here is going to give you the foundation so you'll understand what happens to bonds when they're issued. And the value of the bond is based on current collateral that is backing the bond. The bonds that are available in the past from governments that don't exist anymore, how much you think they're worth? Nothing. So when there's a regime change, there's no value there. That's why when everybody was running after all these Iraqi dinars and everything, I told them no. And everybody that I know have lost their shirts, and the brokers are still trying to peddle what they got off.
Others are meant to be secret, but the truth is slowly coming out, like the Federal Reserve being a private corporation and not really part of the US government. But when I started studying this, what I found was that there was no place that I could point people to where they could get it all in one spot. And so I basically decided to write my book about it and consolidate monetary history, economics, the markets, fundamentals of gold and silver. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors in economics, and I've sort of made it my job to lift the fog for people.
Okay, hold on one second. I'm gonna give you an example of the fog so people will understand every facet of this video and everything else that we study. An example of the fog is you guys believe that house prices are going up, food prices are going up, all these things are getting higher, oil prices are going up, but they're not. Not one price of anything in history has gone up. The value of the currency has gone down, and you believe that the prices are going up because it requires you to have more and more of this worthless currency to acquire the same things you could acquire for a lot less currency just 10 years ago. Why is the currency price, the prices of everything going up? Because they keep giving you guys stimulus. You should say no to the stimulus. You keep getting the stimulus, and the stimulus will never be enough because the more money they print, the less value the money is that you have.
Welcome to Egypt. This is where it all began. Roughly 5,000 years ago, the Egyptians started using gold and silver as their predominant form of currency. But it was not yet money. The pieces of gold and silver that they were using were odd sizes and weights, odd purities, so it still was not interchangeable, where each unit is the same as the next. This meant that nothing really had a price yet. You couldn't put a price of so many coins on something because they didn't have coins yet. Trade was still difficult. It was still a guessing game when it came to the exchange of values.
Like crypto.
One of the reasons that we are in the financial mess that we are today globally is that people do not understand the difference between currency and money. Currency is a medium of exchange, a unit of account. It is portable, durable, divisible, and something called fungible. Fungible means that each unit is the same as the next unit. A dollar in my pocket buys the same amount as a dollar in your pocket.
But he means it buys the same amount as a dollar in your pocket today. But tomorrow is going to be worth different if it's more currency pursuant to supply and demand, which is another economic law.
Money is all of those things plus a store of value over a long period of time. Even financial planners, bankers, your accountants, they don't understand the difference between currency and money. The currency in your pocket is a medium of exchange. It's a unit of account because it's got numbers on it. It's somewhat durable, it's portable, it's divisible in that you can make change, and it's fungible. A dollar in my pocket buys the same amount as a dollar in your pocket. But because governments can print more and more and more of it and dilute the currency supply, it's continually transferring wealth out of your pocket, out of your bank account, to the government and to the banking system. The reason that gold and silver are the optimum form of money is because of their properties. It's an easy medium of exchange because gold and silver store a large amount of value in a very small area. It's a unit of account. Pure gold has the same value all over the planet. So an ounce of gold buys the same amount here in Egypt as it would in China or in the United States.
Now, you can't say that about currency. That's the reason why some currency, the Forex market, is all over the place, because USD is always jumping around. They tried to solve this problem by making it the reserve currency for the oil. But then, you know, they exported all of this money. Now they're in trouble. Gold, you can't print. That's the reason why it has a store of value.
It's durable. The same gold that Egyptians were using in trade 5,000 years ago is still here with us today. It does not corrode. It's divisible. You can make change with it. It's very portable. You could use something like oil as money. It's just that you can't carry around a barrel of oil on your back. It's fungible. Pure gold is the same wherever it is on Earth. Pure silver is the same wherever it is on Earth. It's limited in quantity. That's the reason that it maintains its purchasing power. Governments cannot print it. Over the last 5,000 years, only gold and silver have maintained their purchasing power. There have been thousands upon thousands of fiat currencies, currencies that are unbacked by gold or silver, and they have all gone to zero.
This includes crypto of today. They will all go to zero. And that's the reason why U.S. Capital is issuing a gold-backed cryptocurrency.
It's a 100% failure rate.
Well, fiat currency, of course, is a currency that exists at the dictate or by fiat from a government. You see, they have their printing presses, and the paper money rolls off the printing presses. And then they give it the fiat designation, which makes the currency official. It's just worthless paper. But when Ben Bernanke gives it the special sign, and they have the cult meeting at the Federal Open Market Committee meetings, it suddenly becomes currency.
If you look at what's really going on, it's a con game. And so there's confidence. Well, the Federal Reserve is very forthright about what they're doing. If you read their websites, they'll tell you it's a confidence game. They tell you that there's no intrinsic value in their money. They'll tell you that they print it backed by absolutely nothing. They actually display all these facts. But if you tell somebody in the public...
Why do they display these facts? Because you are under contract. And every contract that you sign in the private or the public is full disclosure. That's the reason why you can redeem your birth certificate, because you was a baby and you was a party to the contract. You didn't have the opportunity to read it. So nobody can even deny you that right. But that's the reason why they explain everything to you.
That this stuff is created out of thin air. There's no backing whatsoever. It's absolutely worthless. It's about as valuable as monopoly money. They'll look at you like you're nuts.
Is there an example throughout history of a fiat currency, a piece of paper that's unbacked by anything, surviving?
Short answer, no. Long answer, no. And here's why. When Addison Wiggin took over at the Daily Record, when they got cranked up, Bill Warner asked him to catalog all of the fiat currencies throughout history and what happened to each of them. Addison dutifully went to work. Within a short period of time, he had gone through the alphabet. All the fiat currencies that started with the letter A were done. They all went to zero. He was halfway through the letter B, and all the fiat currencies that started with the letter B, and there were 600 of them in just the first letter and a half of the alphabet, and every single one of them went to zero.
In other words, that means that the money itself
600
is going to return to zero. During World War I, and the reason why they did the Rothschilds did that agreement to take Palestine with England was because the currencies in Germany have went to zero. There's a story that this guy put a wheelbarrow full of cash in to go buy something. He left the wheelbarrow outside full of the cash, and when he came out, they stole the wheelbarrow and left the cash on the ground. That's how worthless it was, sort of like Indonesian money right now. where you got $7 million to buy a handbag. You see what I'm saying?
King, that's why they own all central bank.
Yeah, because they're trying to use the power of the global monetary system to make this money worth something by regulating the medium of exchange globally. But that will never happen because everybody knows that that will make them all powerful. Whereas gold doesn't make anybody more powerful. The gold itself holds the power. And that's why gold is always going to be the best medium of exchange for any type of transaction.
Fiat currencies that start with the letter A, and half of the ones that start with the letter B are 600 of these things. Not one ever came close. Would you think this one, the United States dollar, is going to be the first one after all that? I don't think so. No. No currency, fiat currency has ever survived. None.
The thing about money is there actually is a fairly well accepted definition of what money is. The question is, as you apply that definition to particular things that people claim to be money, do they fit the definition? We'll just take the paper dollar, for example. How well does it perform those functions? Well, store of value. The dollar has lost 95% of its purchasing power since the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913. So not very good as a store of value.
And what he means by a store of value is that during that time in 1913, you could feed a whole family for a whole month on $1 US. Now you can't even buy a loaf of bread with the same dollar.
One of the things I do is just a way to get the audience's attention is I have a slide, and there are three pictures on the slide. One is a pile of monopoly money. The other one is a pile of Federal Reserve notes, what Americans would call paper money. And the other one is a solid gold American Eagle 1 ounce coin. And the title of the slide is, which of these is not like the other? And if you know the show Sesame Street, or you have children who watch it, it's one of the favorite vignettes in Sesame Street. And what it really is a kind of IQ test for 5-year-olds. They're supposed to look at the three things and look at characteristics and find the one that's not like the other. Well, I've shown this slide to groups of Ivy League university professors, and I've also shown it to, children, kind of 5 years old, my nieces and nephews and so forth. And when the professors look at it, they say, well, clearly the dollars are not like the others because gold has no role as money, and monopoly money is junk, and the American dollar is a store of value, so that's not like the other. But the children look at it and they say, well, the gold coin is not like the other because the other two are just piles of paper and the gold coin is clearly something different. So my question to the audience is, who's smarter, a 5-year-old or an Ivy League professor?
Before World War I, each note that a treasury issued would say that there have been deposited with the United States Treasury $20 in gold coin payable to the bearer upon demand. The money was in the vault. The currency was a note they gave you that was a claim check, only a claim check on the money, the same as if you go to the dry cleaners and you give them your shirt and they give you a claim check for your shirt. The value is that shirt at the dry cleaners, not the piece of paper that says that you own that shirt. So our currency that circulated was the paper US dollars, and they were claim checks on money.
The next hidden secret is the difference between currency and money. Money must be a store of value and maintain its purchasing power over long periods of time. As we progress through this series, you'll learn that national currencies are really a tool used by the government and the financial sector to leech away your time and your freedom by stealing your purchasing power. So rather than storing your economic energy, currencies leak. Now compare that to the gold and silver the Egyptians were using. Like I started with, it still wasn't money because it wasn't interchangeable yet. But they were on the right track, as gold and silver have proven over thousands of years to be the ultimate store of value. Gold is only formed when a star explodes, a supernova, and it stays around forever. This is one of the properties that make it the ultimate money.
People are amazed that after 5,000 years, the pyramids are still here. But what I'm more amazed at is that the currency that the people that built this were using, that currency, that gold and silver that they were using in trade on a daily basis, is still around today. It may have been melted down and re-refined, and it's in a coin or a bar or in some piece of jewelry, but it's still with us today, and it still purchases something.
Yes, it is the ultimate money because there is nothing else even in the same league. It's divisible, it's permanent, it's a store of value, it's a unit of account. It's got everything you want out of money, but it doesn't go away, and it can't be increased. That is what makes gold the most beautiful money of all. What more could you ask out of a money?
It keeps governments under control. You can maintain a solvent system. Governments don't like gold at present because they're getting away with the fiat currencies, and they'll do everything they can to discredit it as an asset class. I mean, my goodness, gold has outperformed the Dow Jones Industrial Average in each of the last 7 years, yet it's not considered a legitimate asset class. Why? Again, it's the fear that maybe gold will be imposed on the system, that it will constrain government ability to spend beyond its means.
They can't print it.
They can't print it, no.
The proper definition of inflation, I use Milton Friedman's definition. Inflation is an expansion of the currency supply. Deflation is a contraction of the currency supply. If you expand the currency supply, eventually prices will rise. And if you contract the currency supply, eventually prices will fall.
Now, what they call this is interest rates. The Fed says that the interest rates are very low so that they can force the prices to go down while they're printing money. When they bounce back to their normal level, you got a global collapse because everything is pegged against the US dollar because of the oil prices and the agreement made with the oil cartels in the 1970s. It's not the bond that you wouldn't trust. It's the gold backing that is not behind these bonds anymore, because historically we know that Japan took the gold from China in World War II. We know that. And we know that that gold went to the Philippines. So if you don't have the collateral behind the bond, what does the bond become worth anymore if it's a gold-backed bond?
Zero.
Exactly. It's worth nothing. So even $3,000 for that bond is a very good price in today's market. Now, what did we do? What I did was, since I'm the holder of the gold that these bonds was backing, which you know, because the bonds was backing this particular gold. This is the gold that it was backing, because this is the same gold that came from China, from Genghis Khan time, right? And all that gold ended up in the Philippines, and all the people that had those bonds, like countries, were issued gold-backed certificates because they spent all of their money on these bonds, and China lost the actual gold that backed the bonds. They lost it when Japan came in during the war and took all of their gold. And then they hid it in Ferdinand Marcos in the Philippines, Thailand, a couple of different places, but all of it ended with Ferdinand Marcos, including what Adolf Hitler had. It ended up with this guy. Now, they arrested Ferdinand Marcos because they wanted to use the power of the gun. The Supreme Court ruled that you cannot hold Ferdinand Marcos nor his family accountable to pay off all these bonds with the gold that they have, because the gold that came from China was taken lawfully under the War Powers Act, which states that they became spoils of war. Because China and Japan go to war, Japan could go in there and take anything that they got. Now it belongs to Japan. The same thing that the Babylonians and them did when they came into Israel years ago and took all of the gold and stuff that was in the Holy of Holies. This law has been in effect going all the way back to Adam. So they had to return that gold back to the Philippines. So they said, well, can you give us some certificates for this gold so that we can fund our operations. And what they did was they gave the Philippines all of these TOV, FRB, these are FRB boxes with bonds in them that came from the US Treasury in exchange for them giving them gold-backed certificates. And that's why the Philippines became the settler for the global economy, globally, because they held all the gold. That's Ferdinand Marcos. Now, this is the gold as it was left in the sub-basement of the World Trade Center. Now, this did not belong to the United States, but they had it there because they sent the CIA to capture Ferdinand Marcos and his wife and bring them on trial because they held so many of those bonds and they wanted their money. But the law ruled that you can't hold the Philippines responsible for China because the Philippines wasn't even in the war. It was a gift. So they had to return all that gold back. And everybody remembers when they cleared out the rubbish, they told everybody get out the way so they could transfer all the gold back to the Philippines. It was on the news, and you can look it up. So that being said, these bonds that are worth $3,000 is still overvalued to this day. Okay, let me show you where the value of these bonds came from. Now, what happened was, since the Philippines gave all the gold to U.S. capital in 2015, they gave us the gold because they lost the gold by contract to the IMF because they didn't understand what they were reading. And under their jurisdiction, that's why I teach you guys capitis diminutio maxima and legalese and all of this stuff, so you won't inadvertently walk into any invisible contracts and sell your soul because you don't know what you're reading. Because you cannot be a trustee without even understanding trust law or private side. So what happened? We did the redemption in exchange, since we have the real gold that backed those Super Pacellis. We have the real gold because it was all transferred to us. I did the redemption as a judge in the private International Court of Justice. Just like with every other organization on earth, you got a public side and you got a private side. The statutory side is the commercial banking. The private side is the central banks and the Federal Reserve and trusts. You got it? So this portion of the International Court of Justice deals with redemption and settlement, not only of historical notes, but of every asset that has changed from the regimes that are no longer in place or where the asset itself is no longer there to back the bonds. Give you a case in point, the regime in Iraq has changed. The Iraqi dinars are worth nothing because we never redeemed them. So everybody that's holding them, they worth the same thing you see with these Super Pacellis on eBay, whatever a collector is willing to pay for them for his nostalgic reasons. That's all it's worth. These are not false bonds because Pasco authenticates these bonds. You can tell a copy anyway. Just like with a dollar bill, there's metal in the dollar bill, and there's certain inks that you use in order to print the dollar bill. And just like, and I know this because the guy that does all the ink for USD lives on the corner of my house in Sugarloaf Country Club in Georgia.
Yeah, it's value of the cotton, of Egyptian cotton only.
Exactly. That's what the value is of these bonds to this day until I gave it a valuation here of 587 million. Why was I able to give it a value and nobody else can give it a value? Because nobody has, because I own the gold. See, the
Yes.
gold that was taken, I'm on page 7, but if you read all the way back here, you'll know the whole story between Chiang Kai-shek and Mao Zedong and the Civil War. They divided them together. Then Japan came in, took all the gold, and they hid it in the Philippines. That's the history. I got a really good video up on this site where you can watch it with all the historical everything there, and you can pause it every minute and go back and look it up, and you'll see. So what ended up happening was the gold that was taken, the missing gold was taken by Chiang Kai-shek, Chiang, to what today we know as Taiwan. The gold that was taken was the actual backing for the repayment of these bonds. What bonds? The gold-backed securities that we was just talking about, the super Pacellis. So that gold that was taken was the backing for those super Pacellis, right? For the repayment of these bonds. Consequently, the gold was hidden in Taiwan, Indonesia, and many other surrounding areas still controlled by Chiang, because at that time, Chiang was still considered China in the United Nations. Even though he went to Taiwan, they still had a seat, and China never had a seat until after he died. Do the history, go back and look. That's why I said drill down on everything, do your homework. After the relentless bombing, Japan came in and took over many areas of China because they won the war, and it's called the spoils of war. They took over Taiwan, all that stuff. That's why Taiwan and all that is free right now, and they're trying to get it back. That's the stuff that's going on in the South China Sea on the public side and what they want y'all to believe. But really on the private side, they're trying to pull the Philippines into the war so they can go raid the bunkers, but ain't no gold in there because I moved it. So they stupid. Now China, and they took the gold, they took over many areas of China, located the gold storages in Indonesia, China, Malaysia, Singapore, and other Chinese provinces, and moved the gold and hid it in bunkers in Indonesia and the Philippines. Over the years, Japan lost the war by the bombing of Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Y'all know about Big Boy and Little Boy, right? Those two big nuclear weapons that the US used, the first ones ever, how they defeated Japan. Well, when they bombed Nagasaki and Hiroshima and Japan signed the surrender, unconditional, that's why they said unconditional, because the US knew they had the gold too, and that's why they did that, because they was trying to get in there to get that gold from Japan. But they couldn't because they had already put it in the Philippines, and Ferdinand Marcos hid it in the bunkers because it was finders keepers. Now, some of that gold was found in the Philippines, and eventually it was in the hands of Ferdinand Marcos, and he became the wealthiest man in the world because he was the president. Because the gold was confiscated during a time of war, the ruling was it would be classified as the spoils of war. The laws governing the spoils of war is 50 USCS 2204. And if you want to look it up, let's look it up, 50 USCS 2204. And you can see here, let me see, make sure that that's correct. When I'm doing the research, 2204, Title 50 talks about the spoils of war and what happens when you go in and you defeat a country and you take their stuff. See, the term spoils of war means enemy movable property lawfully captured by law. So now China can't pay these bonds because they ain't got the gold no more. Because now the gold belongs to the Philippines. Seized, confiscated, or found, which is what Ferdinand Marcos did. He found the gold, which has become the property of the seizing state. And here they say the United States, but UCC, this is common under UCC law now too. So that means that the Supreme Court ruled they had to give that gold that they found in the sub-basement of the World Trade Center, they had to give that back to the Philippines. And they took all of those C-130 gunships, filled them up with gold, and flew the gold back to the Philippines. Then many years later, Marcos found the gold hidden in bunkers behind his home. Now, because the United States and its citizens were some of the major purchasers of these bonds, the United States sought to hold the Marcos family responsible for the gold payments due to settling the bonds. When Ronald Reagan was in office, you can look this up, it's all over the Library of Congress. When Ronald Reagan was in office, the U.S. military kidnapped the Marcos family. They didn't subpoena them, they kidnapped them because they knew where the gold was. The Marcos family in the 80s and brought them to face trial. During this long trial, the gold was stored in the lower sub-basement of the World Trade Center. When the Trade Center came down, Ricardo was in the building. They was trying to kill him so they could keep the gold. The spoils of war meant that during the peacetime, you cannot just take the assets, especially after fully understanding the circumstances by which the gold was obtained by the Marcos family. They had no choice but to release it. So after 20 years of back and forth, the gold was held still in the basement of the World Trade Center until the time of the World Trade Center attacks of 9/11. After months of clearing out the wreckage of the buildings, the U.S. government stopped the clearing and recovery efforts to remove the gold from the wreckage, and eventually it was moved back to the bunkers in the Philippines, where it was later given to U.S. Capital Private Bank by contract in 2016, so the redemption of the bonds can only be satisfied by the sovereign International Court of Justice because we are a private bank. Okay? As the licensing body for the U.S. Capital Private Bank as the only divine law bank in the world at the time. There are a few more banks that are popping up under divine law because they learned it from us. Placing this bank above statutory jurisdiction, enabling both the assets to be restored and many historical assets to be redeemed. The gold disputes would later be settled by the IMF agreements of 2010 because China wanted to get in, and China couldn't get in because they never paid the gold, and that's why they couldn't get in. So recently, we allowed China to get in only if they issued these, what are they called, the Chinese yen, to pay toward the SDRs, which are the special drawing rights. So when countries have a problem, that they can use these bonds to pay for their problems. Does that make sense? So now the bonds, I gave them a valuation based on, first of all, they have to be authenticated by Pasco, because Pasco, unlike any other organization, they authenticate this thing with risk, that if they are wrong, then they will pay the risk of whether these bonds are real or not. No other organization on earth agreed to do that for the ICJ but them. So if they got Pasco, we gave them an off-balance sheet balance of $573 million, which means that if you use these bonds off-balance sheet as collateral, for a collateral swap, meaning that if you give this bond to us, when the redemption period, which is 2023 now because of COVID, then we will give you $573 million in an instrument, not cash. On the actual market value is $57 million because that deals with the cost of living index, and it was only a $10 million bond when it was issued. Okay. What does credit and debit mean? Mean on my bank statement, because all banks have this. Any bank you deal with, they have credit and debit. When you hear your banker say, I'll credit your checking account, it means the transaction will increase your checking account balance. Conversely, if your bank debits your account, it takes the money out of your account. To credit your account puts it in, to debit your account, it takes it out. We're going to go back to the SMART plan so it can explain to you why we're even giving you this money. Why do you need this money? Because if you go to your bank right now, even at Merrill Lynch, and you tell them, I want a $500 million letter of credit, they're going to say, okay, we will issue you this letter of credit. Where's the money you want us to block? Then they're going to open up your account and they're going to find $5. They're going to say, well, we can't give you a letter of credit for 500 million because we need to block your money to issue this instrument to mail it out.
Yes. Guarantee.
You
To
have
have
a
a guarantee.
deposit in your account for that amount for the bank accept to issue a bank
Yes.
instrument. for the amount.
Because the instrument itself has to be cash backed.
Base it on something.
Yes, it has to be cash back. Let me just open up the whole smart plan so we can go through that section. And because you don't have the 500 million, U.S. Capital was generous enough to say, guess what? We're going to let you borrow 500 million of our money in your own account, real money that can be verified by the bank, that you can block on behalf of a transaction, but you can use it, you just can't take it out. How do you use it? You use that money to show another bank that you have the collateral right now, so they will give you a credit line.
Which is with the proof of funds, right?
More than the proof of funds, it comes with a SWIFT MT760, which is called a documentary credit. These are SWIFT message types. Banks, if I transfer $500 million from Bank of America to Deutsche Bank, for instance, and if I send a 103, which is a single customer credit transfer, this is SWIFT messages. Let me blow it up so you can see. We just found out when you put money in your account, it's called a credit. So does the credit have to come from your other account, or can the credit come from an outside bank into your account? So say if I send you a straight wire, an MT103, and there are no conditions to this credit, right?
Yes.
That means that I'm sending you a straight credit that tells the bank, give you this money now. And your bank is just going to give you that money because I told your bank, I'm sending you this credit and you could get this money with this 103 from the central bank. And then we're going to let the central bank debit our account on this side. So
It's
that
like
means,
a cash transfer.
yes, it's just a cash transfer.
But I can't do that right now.
No, because the funds are blocked. Now, what you can do,
103.
yeah, but you can send a 700 series message, which is here, down here, because these are all SWIFT messages. And what type of message is each one? Now, 700 category 7 messages are messages where you're transferring a documentary credit.
Yes.
A documentary credit is still the same thing as a 103, but it has conditions. It says you can use this money on these conditions that I've outlined here in this SWIFT. And one of the conditions that I put in that SWIFT is she can use this money so long as you, the receiving bank, give me my documentary credit back after a year and a day or 2 years. I'm not just giving her my money for $90,000. I'm not just giving her 1.2 billion or whatever. I'm allowing her to use my money so that it will secure the credit line that you're giving to her to build a ship or whatever she's going to build. And then after she built the ship, which is going to take a year and a day, you could transfer the collateral over to that ship. So now you could give me my documentary credit and that ship becomes the collateral if she's paying you the loan back. Or the way I structured it, it's a non-recourse transaction, so you don't have to pay the money back because I'm using something called a 2-to-1 non-depletion framework that I got from Divine Law. How does that work? Now, this is a 700. This right here is a 701. This right here is a 705, is a pre-advice. You can use all of these types of SWIFTs depending on which ports are open. You see an MT760? That's the one that we send as a guarantee.
That's the
And if
LC
they-
or the BG.
Yeah, that's called a BG, a bank guarantee.
Yes.
A 767 if I want to amend the verbiage after I've already sent you the guarantee. If they want me to say, well, we don't believe it came from you because it came from a third party, follow up with a 768. So we'll acknowledge it again by a SWIFT 768. If in the event that we're sending, and because say we sent the guarantee to you, you never gave her the credit line and you never gave us our instrument back. Since I'm the issuer of the 760, I could send a 769 and reduce that 760 to 0 and take my instrument back.
Yes.
That's why this system is so secure. And that's why, King Oyanka, that we can't eliminate the central bank, because then we got to recreate all of this stuff when we're doing your currency. So we're going to use the system that's already in place, and now you see why. And the reason why we send an MT799 and it's a free format message is because a MT799 is a pre-advice telling the bank, we have the money here in her account, and this is her account statement right here, her balance, what I just showed you, you remember, with all the money. Here's the account statement. Here's the coordinates where you can log directly in to the eBank portal and see that the money is there. And now we block this money in her account. That's why it's called a non-depletion account, because you can't deplete the money, but you can transfer a guarantee against the money. If anybody don't understand, I'm giving everybody a minute to demute and make your statements before we go in to the next part that explains all of this.
It's understandable.
Thank
Your
you, King
Highness.
David.
It's very understandable.
Okay, and this is the reason why, Monica, I cannot send a 103, because unless you
I received it.
Yeah, and unless we send a 103 202, that's a conditional 103. It's the same thing as a 760, but without the guarantee.
Got it. Okay.
You'd be
And
better off
everything
getting the
is in the
760.
smart
because
plan.
Yeah, yes. And all of this
Everything
is in the
that you
smart.
had mentioned is in the smart plan.
Right. And the 760 is the one that one of my other clients said that they wanted to go to Credit Suisse.
Exactly. The reason why they want to Credit Suisse once the 760 is because Credit Suisse already understands that that 760 is money.
Got it.
Because it's a guarantee. Now, in order for Credit Suisse to get this guarantee from HSBC, there's some verbiage in that guarantee, and you're going to see this in almost all standard verbiage, and it says all charges are for the applicant, right?
Right.
And what does that mean? That means they're going to charge you a fee, letter of credit fees. All charges are for the applicant means that the applicant is going to pay the fees. And for people who say there are no fees, let me show you that every transaction that has anything to do with Rothschild has
a
fees.
Yes.
And who's Rothschild? They own it all, the whole network. Now, let me show you what the fees, because every time we send a SWIFT on your behalf, or anybody sends a SWIFT on our behalf, they're going to send that SWIFT and they're going to charge us fees. The only reason why the amount is so much less with us is because we own 17 of these banks.
Correct.
If you wanted to do a letter of credit on a lease, now under your transaction with the smart plan, these funds are legally owned by you, but placed in trust, okay? So let me show you. This is what those accounts represent. You guys have seen all of these people coming to you with all of this stuff, Marcos funds and Marcos gold and all of that. Well, ain't no more. It's gone, and it's been moved already. You see? These are bonds. This gold bullion, this 5,000 metric tons is a bond. That's what it is. Okay? So let me show you something. Let's go to gold bullion. Or right here, we have the Infinity Cash accounts. And you will see there is no charge for me to monetize these S2S. That's my responsibility to monetize it. But no, nobody want to come to me to get it monetized because either their plans are to do something fraudulent with the money, which is not acceptable. This was turned over to me on June the 30th, 2015. Okay? And this includes all those off-balance sheet funds. And every one of them, the account signatories are either White Spiritual Boy, Spiritual Wonder Boy, King Solomon, King David, Prophet Muhammad, Unknown Man, Rothschild, or Dragon Family coded accounts. All of those particular accounts is coming from that gold. And that's not money until I put the gold next to it. Then it becomes money. So you can't take none of this money out unless you come to the table. See, this is all the transfers. You come to the table and you say, I got these type of projects. Livelihood development, scholarship. I don't charge it. I'll authorize the transfers, and especially since these banks have MTNs and gold-backed securities from us anyway, they're going to pay the money out. Because whatever they pay out, they got to put our instrument in there so the balance doesn't change because it's non-depletion, just like the non-depletion accounts you have in U.S. Capitol, Shelley. It's the same thing. And all of these accounts, including the Federal Reserve and everybody else, these are non-depletion accounts. That's why people can't understand why I could transfer from Bank of America and I seen it show up in Wells Fargo, but I can't take it out. Duh, you just transferring numbers.
That's
you
me,
can't
King
take
David.
it out until you get
King
the
David.
gold back up to put in there to save the actual number that is in there in the balance.
That means any bonds there, if you don't give them the approval against the asset, it's nothing, zero.
Exactly.
Well, but King David, how China raise up again if they lost all this gold?
How did they raise up again?
Yeah.
They did it the way the U.S. did it. They're very smart. They watch the U.S. monopolize and make money off its people, and they're doing the same thing right now. And since they got 2 billion people, they could collateralize a whole lot more birth certificates. The U.S. only has 324 million. That's the reason why they said China's going to be the new world economy. But guess what?
Yes.
Africa has more people than them.
Yes, I agree, 100%.
That's why I told King Oyanka that is on this call that we need to collateralize by gold, because when those fiat currencies crash, we learn, and we're currently learning in this video, they always return to zero. So let's get back to this and let's go through.
That's true.
Clear all drawings. Okay, now I know we halfway through this and some of you guys got in here late, but this whole thing is being recorded, and I will make sure that I say this, and I'm going to send everybody a link to this video with the explanations and everything we just went over.
This is a pool, but it's not a pool of water. This is the currency pool, and these are prices. And if you expand the currency supply, prices like a sponge in water have to rise to suck up the excess currency. Governments never stop printing more currency and adding currency to circulation. Therefore, prices keep on going up, not because the stuff that you're trying to buy is changing. The real estate doesn't change. What has changed is the currency purchases less and less. It's the currency going down, not prices going up.
Now, didn't I just say that? The currency's going down? There's no price increases on oil and anything like that. That's because they keep giving you guys stimulus packages and you taking them, but you don't realize that, guess what? Every time you take a stimulus package, you got to pay the debt back. The government ain't paying nothing. Look, all they're doing is printing more IOUs, which is USD and everything else. This is a real-time view of it. You see this? $86 trillion in debt that your children got to pay for. The day they born, they already owe 226,000. So if they make 226,000 over the first 10 years of their life and they die, they made nothing. But the government needs to collect on the deficit.
That's mean United States is bankrupt already.
So the United States has been bankrupt since 1933.
My
U.S.
God.
bankruptcy date. In exchange for their bankruptcy, they came out with something called the New Deal, where they started issuing you guys Social Security cards, and they started using your birth certificates and using the people as collateral. This is the Emergency Bankruptcy Act under Franklin Delano Roosevelt of 1933, where they enacted House Joint Resolution 192. And the only reason why they had to do this is because, and this was the 93rd Congress, a joint resolution to establish a national policy relating to conversion of the metric. No, not that one. Don't try to get slick. It was in 1933 at 4 p.m. Where is it at? House Joint Resolution 192 redemption. Because this happened on the private side. So now you see how slick they are? They try to create something on the public side so you can be confused. Let's see. Was it ever repealed? No. House Joint Resolution. This is to redeem your straw man birth certificate. Let's see. Let's go to, I want to pull up the actual House Joint. And you know what? I have the original. This is where they said that it became legal tender. Here it is. Originally printed in United States Government Printing Office in 1934. This is the printed copy. Where is it at here? There you go. In Public Law 7310. You see that? But they, you know what? As long as we don't read, they're going to keep doing this to y'all. This is on the private side.
Amen.
This is the whole thing. And now they made it so if anybody Google it, they're going to think it got something to do with this new thing I just saw. And I ain't never seen that before. What they did was they used the citizens as collateral. Under the same thing I told you, capitis diminutio maxima, and they created GDP out of thin air by telling the people that they traded the birth certificates for Federal Reserve notes. That's why we owe the Fed all of that money. You see that? The source of this U.S. debt is from where? The Federal Reserve. Look where it says U.S. debt clock. It tells you that's the source of the real-time running total. The source of Washington, D.C. is the U.S. Treasury. That's only 10 square miles, Washington, D.C. That's how much the Congress people taking off the money. And guess who paying the debt back? You. That's why the prices keep going up. So every time you take another stimulus, the price of a loaf of bread gonna go back up 20 cents more or 30 cents more. So you don't want a stimulus. You better start bartering. Because your knowledge and your energy is where all the real money is coming from. When you get that stimulus, you're just making debt that you'll never be able to repay.
Truth is, what we have that makes our world work right now is a big story. None of it's real. It's all just promises. And if you think about it, that's how currency began to work in the beginning. You know, before we had currency, we had barter. I'll give you 3 coconuts and you give me 4 fish, because that's kind of a fair exchange on coconuts to fish. But that got complicated, so we had to invent this thing called money to be a divisible, portable medium of exchange. And the challenge is that we lost that a long time ago when we lost having things of value be our currency. And now we have this thing called numbers and accounts. But trust me, it is not real. It's a big made-up story.
One of the biggest make-believe stories ever is called quantitative easing, which sounds complex, but it's really just a smoke and mirrors term for currency creation. QE started with the banking bailouts back in 2009. This currency was created out of thin air and then given to the banks, who paid themselves record bonuses in reward for crashing the world economy. This is a global phenomenon, but all you have to remember for now is that whether it's QE bailouts or stimulus programs, these are all just voodoo, hocus-pocus terms for increased currency creation.
I believe gold and silver will reassert themselves as money. And when they do, there just isn't enough. And their purchasing power is going to go up many, many, many times. Egypt is an amazing place. There's a franticness about it, and utter chaos, especially like the traffic. But when it comes to like all of the merchants that are trying to get every last dime out of you, you get fleeced to the point where you come back with an empty wallet. But you know what? They're amateurs compared to Wall Street.
In the past several years, I've spoken in many countries about the crisis that's coming, and a lot of people think that they're going to be okay in their country, that it's only going to happen to the United States or maybe the United States in Europe. But what they don't realize is that this is a global phenomenon. I got to show you something here. This is base currency in the United States. This is the number of paper dollars that exist, basically. It took 200 years to go from no dollars in existence to 825 billion. And then we had the bailouts, and then we had QE1, quantitative easing 1, then QE2, and then we had QE3, and then QE4, and then soon we're going to have QE57 and QE382. And it isn't just here. This is what the Canadian currency supply looks like. This is Australia, South Africa, Russia. Now, this starts out in just the year 2001, and this is like 18 times more currency in existence in a little over a decade. Here's Singapore, same story. Look at that, since the crisis, just bam. India, China, every government on the planet is doing this insane deficit spending and expanding their currency supplies, doing bailouts, and history shows that there is no example of this turning out well.
It is sometimes amazing that we haven't experienced more inflation than we have. If they keep expanding the money supply so vastly, why aren't our prices growing faster than they really are? And the answer is that a good chunk of the money that the Fed created has been shipped overseas. I remember early in my research, I heard this expression that the Americans have exported their inflation. I thought, what is that? How can you export your inflation? Put it in a box and send it out? What do you do? Well, now I understand. You export your inflation by simply sending all these dollars that you created to these other countries, and then they send you their refrigerators and their cars and whatever, their TV sets. So you get hardware, and they get little pieces of paper. It's a great deal for the American people for a while. For a while, sooner or later, all of those pigeons come home to roost. When the time comes, as it looks like it's now coming, when the rest of the world is saying, we don't want to play this game anymore. Uncle Sam's dollars are just becoming worthless. There are too many of them. We've got to find something else other than American dollars. Then those dollars start to come back to America. People say, we don't want them anymore. What do we do with them? Once this revs up and we've got this little trickle of money coming back that we previously exported, once it becomes a flood and it starts to rush back, now we are getting our former exported inflation brought back to us, and then we'll see the quantity of money inside the United States grow much more rapidly even than the Federal Reserve can create it.
Now, let me show you something. I know I keep stopping, but I need to show you these things so you can get a better understanding of what I meant when I said these hangars that are full of money in these airports that was signed over the U.S. Capitol because they want, what are you going to do with the money? There's nothing we can do with this money because if we put it back in the money supply It's going to collapse the economy. That's what he's talking about, sending all this money back to the U.S. For redemption. They can't redeem it with nothing because they ain't got nothing. They got the people backing the money. And if the people ain't working, you really ain't got nothing because you ain't got the energy of the people. You follow what I'm saying? So now all this currency is sitting in airports around the world, sitting with people that shipped all their goods and services back to the U.S., but they can't use their money. Even the Fed won't clear it.
Because we're getting a previous money back. And that's when we will really see the tanking of the U.S. dollar in terms of what it will buy.
During the second round of quantitative easing, global food prices went up 60%. And this created a humanitarian disaster for the 2 billion people on Earth who live on less than $2 a day. These people were hungry to start with, they became hungrier, and some of them started overthrowing their governments in North Africa and around the Middle East. So quantitative easing was the spark that ignited the Arab Spring. So that's it. When you create money, you get some sort of inflation. It just depends on where the inflation goes.
For example, in Egypt recently, once that ratio got to 40% of income going to food and the price of food rising due to inflation, when it got to 40%, that's historically a point where people actually stage a revolution. That's exactly what we saw. The French Revolution, similarly, was all around the price of food getting to a certain critical point where people simply, the risk reward for revolution was favorable toward revolution.
When they print it up, then it all goes down.
Well, exactly right, because when you have a runaway inflation, it's punishing the very people who are most productive in society. In other words, the people that produce more than they consume and save the difference. The problem is that those productive people, the savers, save in their national currency. And unfortunately, the national currency is just a fiat piece of paper at this point.
And this is the reason why I explain over and over, your money is best serving you right now in this volatile economy in hard assets. If you don't want to buy gold or whatever, you can buy things that will last, like vintage Ferraris and that sort of stuff. Because the price going to only go up because the currency's coming down. You're going to get more of your value out of those things than you would if you just leave the money in there and take it out a year later. First of all, they're only paying you 1%. And if that, and then you get that over a whole year or somewhat. Now, at the same time, they print money, so you losing 40% of your money's value every time you go shopping. You notice your shopping food bill used to be $400 for 5 people or whatever. Now you're paying $1,300 and $1,500 for the same amount of food. That's because the money's becoming worth less, not the food.
So when it's destroyed through runaway inflation, that $100,000 that you were hoping to retire on doesn't exist. And the things that you were going to buy with it and provide for others don't exist either. Now what are you going to do?
The great news is that gold and silver always end up doing an accounting of the expansion of the currency supplies. Basically, the will of the public and the free markets. When governments do this kind of stuff to their currency supply, they debase it. Eventually it comes back in inflation. People sense the loss of their purchasing power. They rush back to gold and silver and they bid the value of the gold and silver up in the country until it meets or exceeds the value of all the currency in circulation. This is a process that's been going on over and over again throughout history, except this time it's happening on a global scale. It has never before happened in all countries at once. And that means that this is the greatest wealth transfer in history. Therefore, it's the greatest opportunity in history, and it's not going to happen again in your lifetime.
And the reason why I knew this years ago and I started collecting gold. And that's the reason why I send people to this site, sedm.org, because I learned a lot of my information from federal judges, but most of it comes from this site. Everything you need to know about taxation and invisible contracts and the straw man and all of that is in this website. And if you, like me, you followed every one of these links and learned everything you could. Get redemption, but don't do it all at once, because we got to make sure that the payments keep going out to the Rothschilds after we finish, then everybody's free. This is my YouTube channel, and there's a lot of videos in here that you really need to look at, because these videos are further training in all the stuff that you have been learning today and so many other subjects that apply to you and your life.
Okay.
And this is the reason why there's not a lot of hits on here, because people don't like education. You know? People don't like it, but I'm telling you, it's the key to your success. It's the key to mine.
Amen.
I didn't have all of it. They had stolen it
Amen.
all from King Solomon years and years ago. And it went full circle. It went through Khazaria, then it went straight to China, then from China to Japan, then to the Philippines, and now it's back with King Solomon's ancestor. But the point is that a fool and his money is very soon parted.